All right, you want to get home? All right, bye. Good evening, everybody. All right, today's sunset, 8:05 p.m., 7:05 p.m. on Standard Time, and sunrise today, 6:27 a.m., 5:27 a.m. on Standard Time. Maybe this time I will have Mohammed on for the entire stream. If he is, if quit, we're good. All right, seriously, phone quit. Oh, we're good. Okay, how like this? And he's had a farm humans. Project, he really did a lot of harm. Yeah. All right, guys. I I had to I had to switch to my phone LTE. Yeah, but we all know that that this community might be getting very serious. Like they might be making really serious decisions here. If not, then we're gonna be really having. I think sad in a way. If not, then we're gonna be really making decisions here. We're gonna have really have. Because the man who said that we do not, we might be making some really. And if not, then we're gonna have to really make some. Because this looks very similar, in my opinion. Uh, like probably they lost like 11 games. That will happen. But, but, but the cell. Hello. The cell have. Uh, yeah. Oh, I'm going for a walk, man. Yeah. Yeah. But, the issue that we had, I don't think I want to keep messing with. Yeah, I live stream roughly every week. Andrew said to me that a long time ago. Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, that he said that very obvious that, well, it's a very warm day. I'm starting to get cold again. But we're really starting to get into more like summertime temperatures. So not so in the distant future, while plus 20 again. But I want to tell everybody that the band basically, we were unfortunate that we fell out of that playoff spot with the cell basically. You know, it was very obvious that like we sold the deadline. During 2014-15, when we fell out of that chase, we probably we lost like 7-3, and it was at that point, so we fans were not happy during that 2014-15 season. There was like obvious rebuild, where a rebuild was coming, and we explained what that would. It's probably going to take maybe a couple of years. But they're definitely going to be selling foreign free agency, and I think Boston overall is going to try to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Boston, I think for sure. Actually, you know what? Boston should ensure this does not happen again in the future. We win. And honestly, this might be the worst season under Don Sweeney and Neely, because under that ownership, we've had their growth, in my opinion. And I don't think they've ever fallen to that point. Philadelphia and Philadelphia fell like dead last. Now, so this is obviously the worst season they've had. So, 8th overall in the Atlantic. So they fell 8th in the Atlantic during the season. So they went from being so they really fell off through the season. Their numbers and here were not that great. Toronto, not so much. Toronto had really a bad season through 23-24, except for what really kind of suppressed And it wasn't a great season overall. I looked at their numbers and said, we had struggled to start the season. So it's why I want to watch what happens during next year, see if things really do start to pull up. But yeah. Hi, Mohammed.
Hi, Dylan.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good with my noise sibling. We're good.
Well, what were you saying?
I'm saying with my nine siblings.
Oh yeah.
My mama's room.
Hey, hi Nora.
No. Better shoot.
Yeah, it was a warm day earlier today. It was warm earlier.
What?
It was actually we actually had quite a lot of nice weather
I know.
today.
I hear it's supposed to be nice for a whole week.
Yeah,
Good.
and it's also Easter.
Easter Monday.
Yeah,
You want to say hi to Nora?
yeah. I want to say hi to Nora.
Nora. Sweetie. Tell Nora to come. Nora, come. Oh. Dylan wants to say hi to you.
Hey Nora.
Say hi.
Hey, Dylan.
Hey Nora. How are you doing?
Pine he's in Pine Ridge.
Yeah, I'm walking in the direction of Pine Ridge right now, Nora.
Wow.
Can you just be nice?
I am.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mama. Nothing.
Is it empty?
Yeah.
It is empty.
Yeah, like it's Easter weekend. It's
Yeah.
a warm day.
Would you have any plan for Easter?
Well, we're having people over at the house.
Oh, lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh, your parents? Like your cousin, your grandma?
my husband's but the temperature right now is like 12. The temperature right now is about plus 13 degrees Celsius. So it's quite a warm day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you gonna do Easter punk?
Well, I am gonna do Easter cupcakes.
Lucky.
Yeah.
You're lucky, Dylan.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. How is
Well,
Akif doing?
I haven't
Oh yeah,
seen it.
because you don't talk to him anymore.
Well, I'm gonna try to go out to Dunbarton at some point.
Are you?
Yeah, not this week, but the week after.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you go
I want.
Dumbarton, say tell Akif I said hi.
Yeah.
How about Jaden? Oh yeah, Jaden doesn't do anything
Yeah.
because you don't see him all the time.
I don't see him all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's nice to see you, Mohammed.
I just popped in to say hi to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will be keeping the stream going, but if you wanna, I'll have to let you go. But I will. I'll be keeping the stream going at some point. If you want to hop back on at some point, you're more than welcome to.
I will.
All right. See you later, Mohammed.
See you, Dylan.
There we go. I was going to get back into the discussion with about. So about a few weeks ago, I was talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, how their playoff success has not been that. About a year ago, I was talking about the idea that there are probably going to be some really big changes coming this offseason. It looks like we're probably going to be looking at a really serious overhaul. Come next year. Because the Leafs have won their division, and we're playing Ottawa, so we really have to watch what happens, because they're going to be really big. As rumors are circulating within the Toronto Maple Leafs that if we don't see any success come the playoffs, there are going to be really serious changes coming in the offseason, coming this summer. So this is why I've been kind of talking about this for a while, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. The Leafs are probably going to miss the playoffs next year. The Toronto Maple Leafs probably will probably miss the playoffs next year. And there's a lot. This is what has me kind of speculating, is because speculation, and here's why. I think that might be what could go wrong is both sides are locked up long term. And
Hey, what's up, Dylan?
hey Josh, how are you?
Heinrich, I see.
Yeah,
Yeah, how you doing, dude?
I'm doing good.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that it was nice that we've been able to talk. That we're able to talk again, because because what happened to your old channel? Because your old channel disappeared.
Yeah, that you mean my YouTube channel?
Yeah, your old YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, that got terminated, but then it kind of came back, and I can't have access to that account, so that's why I'm on the other account, and I just got popular all of a sudden. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we had. It hasn't been since last year that we talked.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Like the weather out here is just been really warm.
Yeah, I thought it's pretty damn warm actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I actually had a lot of people actually popping on here, like because in the wintertime I wasn't coming out here as much because there was a lot of snow out here.
Oh, we did. Yeah, we did have a lot of snow, like literally.
Yeah.
But now it's warming up. In a couple of weeks, it's going to be warming up pretty much.
Yeah.
Did you realize that the USA was in a deep freeze last winter? Like, this winter.
Yeah, it was in a deep freeze.
It was a deep freeze all across America, including Florida had some chilly temperatures.
Yeah, and we had really cold temperatures, and it was just snow, there was a lot of snow, in our area, and do you still come to Pine Ridge?
Not really anymore.
Yeah. Hopper, I left because when I left Pine Ridge about a few years ago, I honestly was thinking I might probably never be seeing Nora again. If I was just talking to Nora earlier.
Yeah, you were talking with Nora?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Haven't met that girl in 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. Well, it's been very interesting because since then my channel, I think since then I've been doing a lot more streams out here, and then really over the last year my channel has been growing a little bit more.
Yeah, that's because that YouTube is doing something actually that gives more, clout towards, like, smaller YouTubers. So yeah,
Yeah.
which is fine.
Well,
But yeah, it's good talking to you, Dylan. We actually met when I was walking home with my sister and her friend. We were at the Glengrove Park for about a couple of hours. We
yeah.
met. Yeah. By the way, you know that park with swings actually in a neighborhood?
Yeah.
We went there yesterday.
Oh yeah. I was not in town yesterday.
Yeah, because you went to London, I guess.
Yeah, like, if you saw my video. Yeah, I think you probably saw my video from earlier.
Yeah, you went from Pickering to London. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta go now. I'm Dylan. It's been nice talking to you.
Yep. All right. See ya.
See you later, bro.
That was my friend Josh Odell. I actually want to talk to people about what's going to happen here in the long term. I haven't really streamed on here with him. I know me and Josh does come on my channel. Josh, I think the last time was when we were out at the CNE. I actually did a video at the CNE last year. That's on Skyride. Because Joshua Waddell, and most people that don't know who my friends we used to be, who I actually had multiple other people on, I think with Josh and Nora. I actually had some other people pop on as well. I think Tricky Nicky. Well, we met some of our fellow YouTubers. Yeah, actually, there's a big YouTuber that lives in our area, though. Hider is being used like an advanced tool. That ain't here, but like. But like. That was my other friend Josh. Like, we haven't seen Josh since 2023 because most people that don't know what happened, what Josh was talking about was his channel got taken down. And I know I may have to move. And you may know this that I want to become very obvious here that I probably won't be doing streams out here for some time. Because why I'm considering moving my streaming. Everybody. But when I leave Toronto, we wanted to do. So, wanted. Yeah, I've known this team's history. There have been upsets. There have been upsets in the past. So Andrew said we would ban, but yeah, there have been upsets in the past where we've had upsets in the past where Toronto had a really dramatic upset in the playoffs last season. And it looked like Toronto was going to win the playoffs. It was going to actually win against Boston. And we actually had quite an upset that year. Last year, but like they're saying that this is actually everything's on the line here, right? Like there's a lot of things at stake here, right? How many season had? You mean today? It's probably most likely. If the Leafs lose in the first round again, this offseason in the playoffs after this year, I think the days of this core are probably done. Of this core being together is done. Yeah, I think there's going to be really serious changes next year. I don't think they're really, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs, and I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. So, if we're going to make the playoffs, and I don't think that we're going to make the playoffs. So, we're going to make the playoffs. So like everything's on the line here, right? There are jobs at stake. Everything's at stake here, right? Like the things that are really going to matter. They've been really good down the stretch. They have 108 points, but we have a dramatic upset in round one. Even if we lose into like game 7, I think it might be considered an upset. But like we had a really big upset during the 2023 playoffs, where I mean, if we get knocked out one more time, there's going to be really serious changes come next year. Because I think what Brad Treliving was saying, there was a warning shot that we're probably going to be making certain movements. I think Toronto is also looking at big changes come this offseason if we don't get past the first round. Or at least past the first 2 rounds at least. I'm not even talking about round 1, but at least the first 2 rounds. Anyway, there's no conference final this year. Or if we fail to get out of the first round, and there's no and to the conference final, they are going to be really serious changes. I'm really hoping for a deep run. But like a lot of expectation. And I think with franchises I think both franchises in general are facing more pressure this year. Because in their conferences, so like Toronto overall is not so much is at stake here. I mean, if the Leafs lose in the first round again, like I think the time with this Maple Leaf team being a playoff team would be over. Like it would be over for this. I guess over for this franchise. Like the days of asking for change might soon be granted, and I think we're going to be looking at maybe a year where we could be out of the playoffs. And that's why I'm really saying that come next year, we might probably be. Like I said, that Shanahan's on the hot seat. That Brendan Shanahan was on the hot seat, meaning that if there was no winning of the division, and there's no winning an Atlantic Division title. We have, but and there's no deep run in the playoffs this year. There are going to be massive changes. And this could be the end for Mitch Marner as a lead, John Tavares as a lead. And I think back to the last couple of years and the last couple of playoff series where they just can't score. And we all know and seen it that everything tends to go cold in the playoffs. Cold comes playoff time, and they're just not good overall. So generally, I don't think they're going to get past round one. Because realistically, I think just based on this team's track record, I think I'm going to pick Ottawa. I am picking Ottawa. Until I see them get past the first two rounds, I'm not picking the Leafs in round one anymore. After this year. Not after last. I thought it was over. Last year proved me otherwise. I said that I'm saying this to be clear. If there's no change from round one after the first round, okay. Let's say if the Leafs advance to the conference final and we catch Washington, I would say Washington 5 or 4 or 5 games, 4 or 5 and 5 or less. Like, if this season could be listen, so much is on the line this year, and this is not 2021 or 2022 or 23. This is not 2020 or 2021. We have all seen that Toronto is a heavy favorite is going into the first playoff series. The Senators as heavy favorites. If we don't see a deep run, I'm kind of right on board to say that there are going to be a lot of big changes this summer, this off season, and I feel and yeah, if that's the case. I have to think of this as a complete failure. At this core, that we're going to be making a video talking about what went wrong with the 2015-2018 rebuild. What went wrong with the 2017 rebuild? I would probably say it was rushed. That maybe they were just too soon. I think in reality, they may have did just a really, really short rebuild and went right back into being maybe a playoff team again. They did a short rebuild. I think it was what we saw. They decided to forge ahead with a short rebuild. So that started in 2014. It started at the start of 2015 when they fired Randy Carlyle. Then this is when the problems really began. This is when the crash started becoming an issue. I think, in my opinion, if they kept, basically, I would say fire the coach when I said fire the hose. Then they really started to sell. I'm like, then they went on to draft. Fucking draft it. Between Matthew, Marner, and Nylander. We went for a whole year to be in the year of mediocrity, and then we went into a rebuild around. And they were slowly building toward being a playoff team. Montreal made the playoff. Ottawa made the playoff. Well, Ottawa really was the only team. I think things were starting to warn us that things were starting to change. Why I think next season, I agree that maybe next season, after this season, Toronto is also another team that's also looking at big moves, of making really big moves from this offseason. We know Austin Matthews is not going anywhere, but I want to play out the year and see what happens. Like, I want to see how this plays out over time. But like, if there really is serious change, I don't still think that this team has a chance. But I want to see how Game 1 goes. I want to see how this series goes. Because if we get out in the first round, that would be a massive achievement for real this time. And if Toronto gets into the playoffs from next year, say this team might have been a complete success in the end. Because Shanahan, and everybody was criticizing Brendan Shanahan's playoff format, how bringing in a lot of people, including Kyle Dubas, Brendan Shanahan. I remember this team was not great during 2021. During 2020, I meant to say 2019, 2020. It was the 2020 season. It was the 2020 shortened season. A lot of people would remember what happened that year. Toronto ended up doing some sort of a retool in the offseason, and Toronto decided to do some sort of a retool. In the offseason. I get this team back on track. And this was also a retool year. And after last season, we were actually having some talks throughout last year. Does Toronto need to do some sort of a retool here? We did kind of do a retool in the offseason. We all knew that this was a retool year. That they did a complete retool from the offseason, last offseason. We were all thinking of this year being a retool year. We went for a year slightly below average. And ended up winning the division instead. And Florida Panthers, which started the year in first, which we were thinking we were going to be able to, and Toronto was first, ended up winning the division instead. So I think the bottom line is playoff success is going to really matter all that matters now is how deep will we see this team go. And if LeBron stand up roughly, if Scores just played out of his mind, like we saw down what we saw in like the last couple of weeks, I think Anthony Scores might actually take this team. We might be looking at possibly going to a cup final with him, and he might win the Conn Smythe, and there's a good chance that he might win the Conn Smythe. He might win the Conn Smythe trophy. He might win the Conn Smythe trophy. That Anthony Swartz win the Conn Smythe for playoff MVP, because we know McDavid hasn't been okay this season too, and then we know that Matthews hasn't been okay with the division overall. I looked around the Atlantic Division. Toronto Summers have actually been really good since probably like St. Patrick's Day. And we were actually okay, that's kind of what we expected. And we were starting to have that discussion like, does Toronto need to do some sort of rebuild or something like I think what Toronto ended up doing in the offseason was they decided to do some sort of a retool. They did some sort of a retool in the offseason. So what happened this year was Boston finished all the way in eighth. They went from being like a first place team or second place team to being like one of the worst teams in the division, and Toronto overall had some. There were many of them, and one of them won their one, and one of them was winning their division. Like, we gotta keep that saying. We know that that's their permit. We know that that's the permits for an MPA, but like, Toronto overall might be looking at some really serious changes. This is why I'm really starting to think that come next year, they may or may not be in the playoffs. That's why Toronto may or may not be in the playoffs. So beware. I think we all know. I think one thing is we can't afford for Solars to go bad, because if he is, in my opinion, what would have to go wrong? My concern would probably be mostly goaltending. If Solars is not like what we saw this year, generally he was not playing like himself. Like, he wasn't like his normal self. And then like Matthews wasn't that great. I believe for an absolute free fall through March, and then like we were predicting some sort of a regression through the season, like with Toronto. But that never came. And we were expecting that maybe that those numbers in the standings to regress, and maybe Florida to start going up, and for Florida to start kicking up standings. That never came. And Florida, so we would eventually finish first place, and the numbers to regress to a point where we could officially drop back to what the expectations were in the prediction of return to what we consider expectations. What we consider an expectation. But the numbers we saw here in the expectations this year were not reflected. However, firstly, in addition, the Maple Leafs might actually, if let's see it plays out. Like, I could see them get knocked out in round one. I could maybe see the team, maybe advancing and maybe advancing to the second round. But yeah, for one, it's like this team's on the line. Like everything with this team is on like the line right now. Toronto, which is absolutely on the line right now. We can't afford to lose. And another very big thing is we can't afford to get too injured, more injured, so we can't afford a lot of injuries this year. Teams that could miss. Toronto, there was really was some debate flying around during the offseason, really dating back to like, like there was some debate like could they miss the playoffs? Like there really was some debate last offseason. I was listening, kind of like the empty netters, and some people like myself saying that could Toronto actually fall out of the playoff spot this year? That could the Toronto Maple Leafs actually fall out of the playoff picture this year? And could Toronto actually fall out of the playoff picture? I mean, so so there were some concerns like could Toronto actually. But we said no, like Toronto didn't fall out. Well, that luckily never came to pass. Like those concerns never really came to pass. So that was kind of a good thing. Not a bad thing, but good thing at least. And it never came to pass. Toronto overall have had some really good regular season teams. There were so many issues with this team that we were all concerned. Yeah. Why I was kind of one of many people that were raising concerns because there really were starting to hear some debate flying around like during the off season. Like there was some debate like could they act? There really was starting to hear some debate like people like could Toronto actually miss the postseason? And especially after what happened last year, there were some discussions like could they miss the playoffs? They lose so many games, especially. We're gonna have to really watch what happens next year because the Rangers missed after winning their division last year. I'm probably saying we're not that far behind, and we may not be that far behind. With our 5-on-5 numbers overall, a lot of them have not been great this year up until about mid-March. Where they actually been quite good, but like most of it, like Matthews just hasn't been that great. And they were an absolute free fall. So we really were outside the playoffs, or trending to be outside of the playoffs. So Toronto just wasn't that great that year until I look at last year instead. There were a lot of concerns going with this team all through last year. That was making people concerned. So even though Toronto is a good team, they're a good team, so we're not dropping. But the way they were really starting to win games, and the way that they've been winning games, and the velocity, and they were moving at a rapid rate, this made it really difficult to make the predictions to be right. So we were effectively wrong, and I think it's fair to say that I'm considering continuing doing these outside streams, but like at some point I might start scaling back videos here in the future because I'm starting to have that talk here is that if once I start getting into employment, I may not be doing streams. I might not have the time really to do that many streams out here. I may have to stop the channel for a very long time. Because we know that when Sheldon Keefe lost his job, when Sheldon Keefe lost, and we all knew that Keefe's job was on the line this year. Like we all knew, like all through last year, that Keefe's job was on the line. Thankfully, even if they missed the playoffs, we would have been having a really big discussion because there really were a lot of concerns with this team. Going back to the end of last year, you think you have to go back to like last. I think it's last year in general, and we all know that Toronto's future, really with anything on the line here, because when Craig Berube came in, the Atlantic Division overall, when honestly, I would arguably say that maybe Berube was kind of overall maybe the best move because in the end, I was actually proven wrong. I honestly didn't think that Berube wasn't going to be that good for Toronto. Good for the Toronto Maple Leafs, in my opinion. But wait, now up until like maybe at least a month ago, I say Berube, I just didn't quite like him. But now I honestly believe him. He actually did at least something with this team. He actually took this team to a division title, which helped. Scores played a major role in it too, but like I would argue say that Craig Berube really helped this team like get over the hump. Like if we can get to a Stanley Cup under Berube with Craig Berube, especially after all the stuff that we've been through over the last like many decades, it would be cool to see a team win the Stanley Cup under his regime. But like it makes me question how safe is Craig Berube? How safe is this team going to be come next? How safe is the future of Marner and Shanahan? Because we all know that he may be relieved of his duties. Yeah, like, and we heard from Steve Dangle that there are a lot of things. I'm saying if they lose in the first round this year, a lot of changes are coming. Like changes are coming this offseason, and I'm telling you, like Matt Marner is a UFA. as a UFA at the end of the season, at the end of this year's season. And we know that this might be his last year as a league. Time really is getting short and late on all matters here in Toronto. Basically, we have no playoff success out in Toronto. It was a really difficult time period. As I honestly didn't think rumors were starting to circulate was how safe is Steve gonna be here. We all knew that. But I was really starting to question, like, how much time does Steve have left? And I don't think we're ever gonna see him again, unless something really happens. Unless unless something really happens to one of the elite civilians, and we might not bring him back. But like, in case something were to happen to Steve, in case something happens to Steve, thanks. We know he injured his collarbone last about over a year ago. And a lot of people would know this that that kind of watched my channel for quite a while. I don't know if you guys have watched my channel for quite a long time. Steve broke his collarbone back around December of 2023, and he was out for a majority of the year up until I started and I told you guys that when I started doing these streams out here. But Steve's gone, it's obvious that I can't go into the school anymore. We all know that Brendan Shanahan's job is on the line. Everything's on the line. Everything's on the line here in this series. And, like, if it's another embarrassing first round exit, like I have to think that this is a complete disaster. And we will be looking at, and there will be changes. And I don't think we're going to see Marner as a lead again. Not after this year. Like, honestly, it looks like we're going to get Mikko Rantanen, but Marner's no trade clause stopped it from happening. I think in the end it was kind of worth it because what happened from like the 17th of March to like probably from like mid-March right up until like the end of the season. This team was like the best team in the Eastern Conference. But really from like that's a really big time period to say, you know what? I'm starting to think that Toronto might be a team you want to keep an eye out because hello, Martin. Martin, like, what's happening? Well, I'm going for a walk. Just going for a walk. Anyway. Just talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs and talking about we're getting ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Okay. For those people that have watched my channel, really going back to like really going back to last year. The Maple Leafs are trending being The Toronto Maple Leafs are always going to be a team you want to watch closely because where we saw in the regular season start to spill into the playoffs, then Toronto's going to be a team you want to keep an eye out for because it might want to be a team that might not want to be taken lightly. Everyone's going to want to learn easy out. Not so fast. Yeah, Toronto may not be an easy outer, and might not be that easy to defeat what we've seen in recent weeks. especially after all the wins that we started to see out of that Maple Leafs. Now going into the playoffs to a first round matchup against the Senators, it's looking obvious that we're trending toward another first round. Are we gonna have another first round next year? Are we gonna one sport? Yeah. Yeah, hockey. I watch the NHL a lot. I watch the NHL a lot personally. I am a hockey fan with the hometown Leafs, so the Leafs they say that no real success comes out of this season, and there are going to be a lot of talks here about the future, like what's going to happen to Shanahan, what's going to happen to possibly Rich Martin, what's going to happen to possibly a lot of people. Are there going to be a lot of talks going into this season about core four? What's going to be the future of the core four? And Shanahan, I think if Shanahan was to be fired, this team overall had a really good regular season. Actually, this is actually the third best regular season in the franchise history, in the history of the franchise, and in my opinion, Toronto might be a team you want to keep an eye out because, hey, out of attracting like 5 people here, Toronto might be really a bona fide contender. They're moving into the hyper aspect. We've been having really great regular seasons. But they've been good a lot as this year. But defensively, they were not that great last year defensively. So that's why we didn't win the division, was because defensively, even though a lot of people say this team was good offensively last year, but defensively they just were not that great last year. Defensively, they've been. I remember going through a struggle as a Leaf fan. I've been one of many teams that's been struggling. I am a Leaf fan, and to say, yeah. But we all know that they ain't gotta win. This is probably the right time to do it. And this is year 9. I think that maybe things will heal, and I think we're all gonna look back and say, no, they've been to one. They've been to the second round, and then we said, hey, they've been to the second round. And we say, hey, we've been to the second round. Maybe things will clear up, and you might start to analyze anything. No, I'm gonna walk to the bed. The days of Toronto being a really serious contender might be over. And now we're gonna really have to start shifting the focus toward like I'm actually wondering we're gonna come to it. There will come a day where something will happen, and we know we could be talking maybe being out of the playoff for some time. The defense overall wasn't that great under Austin under, but Austin Matthews said that this was a reality check that this, in my opinion, was honestly a really dark. In my view, showing that the Toronto Maple Leafs might be in for some major changes. But like, does Toronto need to do some sort of like a and after like a year or so, that we became a really bona fide, we became really a real family of and actually a contender for the division. Actually a really serious contender for the division. Like, we were not even talking at that point. Then they were ready for real. Like, honestly, I was beginning to think that. I honestly started to think that this was less funny. Like, finally, into the regress, and we were looking at it, okay, into the regress. But really, after that, it was at that point when I finally said, you know what, I don't think that this is funny anymore. Like, Toronto, I don't think that this is even a joke anymore. Like, they're for real. I think maybe Toronto is maybe for real. Maybe they're for real. Maybe the Leafs are maybe they're this year for real. And I really started to think that by the end of March, that when the end of March, early April, I started to think that maybe the Leafs maybe are for real. Like, I think Toronto is maybe for real. Like they're not. Everybody thinks, oh, we're gonna lose in the first round again, and they'll be heels. Like, I'm starting to actually think. We'll see what happens in Game 1, but if Toronto blows this series, a lot of people are going to be saying they're going to be mass changes. Like, if they're for real this year, and they actually do go and win the Stanley Cup, maybe that'll be the first time. Maybe at least we'll have something to look back on and say, you know, what they at least what this core did was, I think at least, hey, they went to the Stanley Cup final. They went to win the Stanley Cup, and they won the Stanley Cup. And for us, and they won the Stanley Cup for us. So I'm starting to think that this narrative here is absolutely negative. Like, there's just been absolutely not a lot of people are saying that the Leafs are for real and they're not going to win the cup. There are a lot of people that say blow it up, but I'm starting to think that I've really started to think at that point we're gonna blow up. Like after last year, I finally said, you know what? I was starting to think that it was at that point I said, you know what? It was at that point I said the word that if we lose to Boston, after we lost to Boston, I finally said, you know what? Blow it up. Blow it up. I think that you can't do it with this score. It doesn't work. That really did a lot of harm to itself. And kind of like what the New Yorker, I mean, like, not all of them are going to be back. And not everybody's going to be back. I'm figuring not everybody's going to be back. So I want to really watch what happens next season to see if the Rangers have a bounce back year, and we start to see maybe a bounce back year for Boston, which I'm really hoping, and a bounce back maybe they may be out for a while, but like maybe a bounce back year for the Rangers, that's one thing, and a bounce back year for Detroit or the Red Wings, or maybe the Red Wings. Maybe the Red Wings, hopefully a bounce back here from Detroit, and a bounce back here for Buffalo. So, yeah. They've been going through a lot of cycles where they've been good for many years, they've been bad, they've been good, they've been bad. So, time goes on, as time goes on, you have to realize that I think as time really goes on, I'm really am talking about not discontinuing these locks up here. Because it's actually getting to this is my old school here, and most people that don't know it, eventually, that comes to an end. And you always enjoy doing something you love to do, but eventually, that comes to an end. Everybody and every team goes through cycles where, they were going to be good for maybe 5 years, and then maybe another 5. I think everybody's saying that not everybody's going to be back. And I get it. Last year, this season is probably going to be forever remembered to be the year where, for a lot of these original 6 teams, a year that just simply wasn't a good year for everybody across the original 6 except Toronto. Really, with the exception of Toronto, with the exception of Toronto, if Toronto and Montreal miss next year and everybody's still out, we're going to have a really big conversation here. That it would be the first time maybe other than the 1920s, but it would be the first time in the post-original 6 era that all original 6 teams missed in the same year. But Toronto feels like they're saying we're not going anywhere. The Leafs are saying we're not going anywhere. They win a lot of games. They've been up in the playoffs. They won the division. So they were 50. They finished 52, 26, 4. That's going to be something we gotta watch closely for next year for the Toronto Maple Leafs. If they lose, the Maple Leafs are a team you want to watch closely now. Because I'm starting to figure if they win the division. I know what happened in 2000 when we've actually done quite well. If you're looking at Ottawa and Toronto, going back into the early 2000s, we've actually done quite well as far as success against them. and we were under a very different era of people at the time with Cam Neely, with Neil, and we were Matt Sundin. We were under Darcy Tucker, Gary Roberts was another one, like Joe Newendike. Like, we were in a very different era than we were Chris Neal. And we're in a that was a very long time ago. But now, these teams, we no longer we're in a very different times are really different now than were in 2020. Eventually, it was 2020. Eventually, we were going to catch up. It was going to catch up to us, and Ottawa win. And Toronto won the division. This is kind of more similar to 2000, that 2000 season where the Leafs won the division. We didn't have the wild cards then, but we at the time we didn't have the wild cards. So like there were 7 and 8 seeds. We were technically we had. But what's different now? I think what's different now is that we no longer have we are in divisions now. And I feel like Toronto's not been as good in the playoffs like it used to be. So fair to say that Ottawa is probably eventually going to beat us. Ottawa is eventually going to beat us, and I think they are. I think they're for real. But Toronto is going to be a team that starts to set the tone. If Ottawa gets swept by Toronto, I would honestly say, wouldn't be that surprised. Toronto is a heavy favorite going into this series, and we're seeing them going always up. And hey, at least they did something as a group. We're all going to look back and say, hey, this group won the Stanley Cup with Toronto. And Toronto has not been that team has. Yeah, we haven't seen Turkey Nicky in a long time. We hadn't seen Turkey. That year really changed kind of like the course. So honestly, this is the first time where I actually was saying like we are at quite a crossroads now where the Maple Leafs are trending up and being an up-and-coming team. And we're at kind of a cross now between 8 years ago and now. And it's we won the division. So 8 years prior, most people remember the last time there was a Venus Great Area, we finished in the wild card. And we were a wild card team. We played Washington. And Washington won the President's Trophy and won the division in the Metro. And we were over in the Metro. We were over in the Metropolitan. Toronto was over in the Metropolitan. Over in the Metropolitan. So in the Metropolitan. In the Metropolitan. In the Metro. In the Metro. In the Metro. We were over in the Metro that year. I think we were overall. We were over in the Metro. In the Metro. The Mac. Yeah, like we were over in the Metro. The Mac. No, yeah, that was the only year we were in the Metro. The Metro. That was the only 2 times we were in the Metro. The Metro. Who was the Metro? It was Washington 2017. and then Columbus in 2020. All of our years have been divisional opponents and teams in the Atlantic Division. And of course, Ottawa is one of them. And of course, Ottawa is one of them. We're gonna see if can they come. Eventually, I think I was going. If Toronto won the division, I was leaning toward a team in the Metro. Maybe a team in the Metro. In the Metro instead, we ended up getting Atlantic Division. We were all in one division. I guess all 5 teams in the Atlantic got in, so we need to take that into account that Toronto is going to be a team we need to watch closely. And Ottawa are going to be one of the many teams we Washington. How about the Eastern Conference? We don't have Boston, so if it's Tampa. If it's Toronto, if it winds up being Toronto that comes out, then yeah, we were over in the Metro. Did we play Ottawa? No, we played Washington. That was in the we were over in the Metro. We finished in a wild card. We played in the Metro that year, 2017, and that was we played the Washington Capitals, which won the President's Trophy. We won the President's Trophy. They overall won the President's Trophy that year. And we were playing them overcoming, much like Toronto 8 years ago in 2017. Toronto was in that second wild card spot, overcoming playing Washington. 8 years later, it's now Montreal. That's kind of more like that up and coming team. So we're definitely starting to see a big shift in the playoff picture for at least a couple of years or so. For at least the next 5 years or so. I don't know if we're going to transition back to the whole phase. But I think that this year, I like 2021's the peak of the warm phase. So we're definitely not trending back into the cold phase. So there were a few years where there was actually we were in mostly the warm phase, and we were in the more of a cold phase. I don't know if we're gonna trend back towards the cold phase of the Toronto Maple Leafs, where there was really only one spike during the cold phase era from 2006 to 2005 to 2006 to 2016, where we were in the cold phase of the Toronto Maple Leafs under the Shanna plan. Yeah. Under Brendan Shanahan, but Sheldon Keefe really in the New Jersey Devils then. Sheldon Keefe really got his team really spanked by Toronto. But really black by that Kyle Dubas. I think it was Kyle Dubas. I think Kyle Dubas we all know that this is Brendan Shanahan's old team. We all know that this is the end for Brendan I think the Hannah plan. When the Hannah plan began, where there were a couple of years where we were bad. I think we were getting out the cold phase. The cold phase, like. And it hurt the franchise, and we really exited the cold phase and started to enter like a warm phase around 2017. So we transitioned out of the cold phase of probably to the warm phase, and so we went to the warm phase for a couple of years or so, where in the night. And there was that flip we were in the cold phase. We were generally in the cold phase. Really, Tamara and I were going to be turning back into the cold phase at some point of the Toronto Maple Leafs year. For at least a couple of years or so, we're mostly going to be bad. So we're going to be bad. But we Buffalo's really been in the cold phase since 2012 and have not gone out the cold phase. I'm probably going to believe throughout all of Neptune and Pisces because probably throughout Neptune and Pisces was really the Buffalo drought. I'm probably going to say that the Buffalo Sabres will play out throughout the Neptune and Pisces. And Pisces? But Toronto overall, has been, they finished with their first losing record since 2006. Pittsburgh being out of the playoffs now for a really long time now means that Toronto will like. This is also their first losing record since 2006. So realistically, a lot of teams. So we went mostly into the cold phase. Sometimes we did back a playoff spot with losing records, but it resulted in early actions when we did. So mostly there might be okay. Roughly on average, it's roughly every 4 years on average before we would flip back into the cold phase. Before we flip back into the cold phase. Or while we haven't gone into the cold phase. Yeah, it's been so many years since we've been in the cold phase and we've actually had a year in the cold phase. But we were in the warm phase of. But right now in the warm phase right now with Frank for Ruby. And say we're gonna play in. Well, it looks like we're gonna crash right back into the cold phase. Oh, and we crashed right out of the playoffs. And that was the year we were in the most of the cold phase. And that was a time period in the cold that we were in the cold phase. The cold phase. well, the whole phase of the Toronto Maple Leafs under Peter Horvat. In reality, we've been in mostly the warm phase since 2017. I would expect the current cycle to end 2026, sometime around 2026 or 2027. The next year, we're probably gonna flip back to the cold phase this upcoming year. Well, we've been overall in the warm phase since when Matthews got drafted, since the time when Austin Matthews was drafted, got drafted, and they went to sign him as Pont. At some point, as maybe this core starts getting, let's face it, they're starting to get older. But as they start getting older and they don't have the depth that they once have, or eventually we're going to start seeing where they might start to flip back into the cold phase. But it looked like we were starting to go into the cold phase with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah. But we were talking with Mohammed, but like, the Toronto Maple Leafs have been one of, if not the best regular season teams in the playoffs. The puck. But Toronto, I don't think we were thinking that we were going to transition into kind of like the Rangers kind of fell into the cold phase, entered the cold phase again after like 4 years or so. When 2021 came, like after the New York Rangers actually hit the cold phase and to the warm phase, like for 2022 till 2024, and then it went. This year, it looked like they started in the warm phase, and then when it crashed out of playoffs in December, they went into the cold phase. So they finished the year in the cold phase. So like they missed playoffs. So the cold phase was a time period of the cold phase, where it was a sustained period of the cold phase of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So of the cold phase. Sometimes we did make the playoffs only once in that time of the cold phase, or a bit of a blip in 2013. We flipped briefly in 2013, and then we get back into the cold phase from 2014 to 2014 through 2016, and then we went back into the warm phase. But like, I think 2019-20, we were right on the borderline of being in the cold phase of the cold phase for a while. And then it looked like this season we were also trending toward being danger of being in the cold phase. So I know every team goes through cycles, and I know Toronto Maple Leafs were among one of them that went into the cold phase throughout the 2010s, the late to mid 2000s through until the mid 2010s. It was actually Detroit recently that went many years without missing the playoffs. And we're in the so-called warm phase for a lot of years of the 90s into the 2000s, throughout the 2000s, and then since then they've been mostly in the cold phase for a very long time. And we're starting to think that next year, but like Ottawa definitely pushed toward making the playoffs. Like I don't think we're gonna have the same teams come next year. I wouldn't be surprised that next year that we start to fight for a wild card spot. Where we start playing for a wild card. I know Toronto overall wasn't that great last year. And there were some talks about what was going to happen. We've been in the so-called good time where but we haven't been in the whole phase really since 2016. Completely in the whole phase. But we are actually well past that point now. And I look back, the last time the Leafs won the division, I was in my grade 12 year 4 years ago. We're so far past that now that the Leafs need to realize that we are so far past into this era now. You know, like I'm starting to post links into the I really am starting to debate. Should we just continue doing these streams out here after this year test? I'm starting to think more and more like I wouldn't be that surprised come next year where we be playing for a wild card spot. Toronto, yeah, New York was kind of they started off good, but then it kind of dropped a bit to fifth. But like we were like, but really the Metro really fell off really quick this year. And like this year just wasn't that great in the Metropolitan overall. Like hopefully maybe we'll have a bounce back next year for both divisions. Like we didn't have a great year in the overall outside Toronto really. It just felt like the entire Eastern Conference wasn't that great. And teams in the Metro talk of how safe is this hell keeps up if they continue to back out of the playoffs. And we knew that the Leafs were in trouble. They were in some real trouble going into this offseason, going into the season. It looked like Sheldon Keefe wasn't going to be coming back to coach. And it was very obvious that they were not going to make the playoffs. We all knew that Brad Treliving came in. It really kind of signaled to all of us that we don't see this team do anything come this off season. Yeah, I don't really come out on Friday. I still do come out on Friday, so like I'm kind of starting to talk about that now and Steve. we knew the Toronto Maple Leafs were not that great. Like, they were free fall. Like, everybody was concerned that, like, people were really starting that. For a lot of people that didn't know, it was, when we lost like 5 out of the last 6 games, it was very obvious that Toronto just wasn't that great last year. And they were really saying there were some people concerned for the Oilers, and the Leafs were also kind of in concern too. Because for us, it really matters more because we know with this core, time may be running out for this group to do something come the postseason and actually do something impressive. Because we know that Mitchell Marner, I think now I'm kind of figuring like next year, I don't see the Rangers making the playoffs next year. And other than now, I really don't even see the Rangers being maybe in the playoff team. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Believe it or not, we're still in. Well, believe it or not, I don't think I wanna consider what to happen next year. 'Cause we knew that kind of like Calgary was kind of in the mix of it being a wild card spot too. Like, but it was tough. Like, it's been a really tough year for a lot of teams in the Metro division. And really, the Leafs, the Rangers are overall not that great. I think the Metro in general wasn't that great this year. Actually, the Metro in general was really bad. So with that, at the Metropolitan overall in general, yeah, we're not saying after making the playoffs this year, it was kind of, well, they are now fighting for a wild card still. Like, we're maybe talking like probably like not so in the far future is when we start to discuss if Matthews starts to fall out or Ovechkin starts to fall out. Yeah, we really would be talking like many years from now. We're seeing if how long this team can maintain being in a playoff. It was honestly a really dark time to be a Leaf fan. This was kind of a wake-up call because, yeah, believe it or not, like Toronto really still might be in contention for at some point that they're eventually miss. There will eventually come a year where they'll miss, but now I'm wondering if Ruby they may stay in playoff contention for at least another 4 years or so. At some point, like Detroit really started drifting into mediocrity. Was slowly drifting into mediocrity. Then making the playoffs and then winning a Stanley Cup and then going to the Stanley Cup final in 2009. I really started to see it showing up around 2012. Babcock got fired. He left for Toronto. When they fired Mike Babcock and moved him to Toronto. And Detroit just hasn't really been the same there ever since. Like Detroit has not really been in the playoffs for a very long time. And Toronto, on the other hand, they've been in the playoffs like every single year since 2017. Believe it or not, I think Toronto, like, the next question really does come up, and a lot of us are talking about it, is how much longer will Toronto be even at or up, or even at the top of the Atlantic? Because we know that time might be starting to catch up. Like, years of problems are starting to really catch up with a lot of teams. And we know Toronto is kind of trending on being out of the playoffs. I want to hear some of your thoughts. Like, there really might come a day where Leaf fans are probably going to say, I don't know how much time and how much longer can the Leafs continue to stay being in the playoffs, sustain all these first round eliminations. Especially we all know that during the height of summer, once the days start getting shorter, I think some talks are going to be starting to happen that way. If things start to go wrong for the Maple Leafs, like, what, in my opinion, like, what would have to go wrong with the Toronto Maple Leafs for them to actually miss the playoffs? Like, what would have to go wrong? Like, what would have to go wrong for that to become possible? It would really have to, something would really have to happen for them to really back out. And something would really have to happen. And it could back out of the playoffs. Like, they're really starting to hear. I don't even know if I want to keep streaming these walks, especially so, like, believe it or not, I'm actually considering slowing them down starting as of next year. Starting this upcoming year. And I haven't felt that interested in doing these streams on a daily basis anymore. I think I'm kind of going to start slowing them down a bit to doing a weekly thing. Maybe with the intention of both Korea Day and Canada Day and Santa Claus Parade, I would probably well, I intend to keep doing these streams for the time being, but like, I think at some point I am going to be getting a job. Yeah. Yeah, because if I have a job, position opening up, I could be employed again, and years of stuff. And when my parents, once especially my parents get to an older age, I don't think we all know that there's going to one day come a time where the Leafs will be out of the playoff spot. Well, they've been kind of out of contention for yeah. I think I'm gonna start heading home tonight. Like, how are you really feeling about the Toronto Maple Leafs playoff success? Yeah, I just really figure off this is better off next year. Well, like, yeah, they were in that race, but yeah, but they were in that race for a playoff spot until they get shifted worse, and they fell out of that chase. Like, they fell out of that chase for the wild card, and Sell takes place, and yeah, 2025 just simply wasn't a good year for Boston, and a lot of these teams do. Like for the first time ever, like all four original three teams from the West missed the playoffs. Like that had not happened before in recent history, and this is actually the first time. There's no season in recent NHL history have we ever had that happen before. So dating back to 2000. So really what formerly was known as the Winnipeg. Formerly the Quebec Northeast. What was formerly the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah. Believe it or not, Toronto might be for a couple of years, I think. There will come a time eventually. I wouldn't be surprised like many years from now where we're really going to be talking about fighting for a wild card. Actually missing the playoffs. Like, it looked like we were going to be fighting for a wild card. But we're really going to be in the top here. And the New York Rangers were kind of in the fight for that wild card as well. But like, they weren't that great. They weren't that great down the stretch. A 6-game losing streak. Toronto had a 6-game losing streak in 2019. And we were kind of in a lot of trouble for it. We were kind of in the race for that final divisional spot. And we were really talking that we were gonna miss until we actually missed the playoffs for that final playoff spot. But in my view, I don't think that should have happened. I don't think that should have happened. But like, yeah, I don't think that should have happened. Yeah, like, we don't know what's that's gonna happen yet. But even if Toronto next year completely regresses and everyone thinking, "Hi, me moron, how are you doing, man?" Yeah, doing good. How are you doing, man? I haven't seen you in quite some time, be moron. Like, I hadn't noticed. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know you've been working all the time, man. Yeah, like, I have my phone turned to the side, but like, I think that this is the only way I can do it vertically. And this thing can be sideways a lot, like full screen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It looks like we're in more full screen view now. So like, yeah. Well, overall, it's oh, wait. Yeah, yeah. Like, I don't know if I can do full screen, but like, I can try. Oh, wait, uh, yeah. I don't think I can do full screen view more on my phone. My computer has the full screen, in my opinion. Yeah. I know my phone really doesn't have full screen. My computer has it. Yeah. So but I know the same people, like, yeah, yeah. Do you know me more, do you know how hard can do it? Like, yeah, I haven't seen you. Oh, horizontally. Yeah. I didn't even this ain't look at it for me. But yeah, there we go. But I'm actually wondering if full screen help. Yeah, camera can go full screen like if it turns this way. I can see through here. I can even see through here. Yeah, Yeah. Now it's in landscape mode. There way I can turn this thing to landscape mode? Like, I'm in portrait for some reason. My phone's in portrait mode, unfortunately. I'm gonna see if I can change my settings to landscape so I can actually get it's in portrait mode. So if I can turn my phone settings and turn this layout and turn it into yeah, like this thing overall, like let me turn that. Yeah, this thing's in full screen mode. At least this thing can go to full screen. I didn't even know this thing can go full. Yeah. No, there are no mana lines out here. You moron. And yeah. Yeah. The light. This thing's on full screen right now. Camera. At least my camera can see in full screen. Especially given that they start slow in 20 games. They're having a down year. You know. Yeah. I know my phone's in portrait, but I'm gonna see how I can. Yeah, like in the future, I'm considering this. Yeah, I might not get around with doing these streams outside as much. But sooner or later, I think at some point, like I'm actually considering. Yeah, I know if my computer starts to get out today, but it's more at risk, and I realize I'm more at risk of. I realize now without the security features getting updated, this thing may not work in the long term. And why I'm talking about getting an upgrade here within the next couple of years. And one of many reasons why my phone is I'm comparing a bit. Yeah. Yeah, meanwhile, Ron, like, how are you doing today overall? I was. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I might have to tilt this thing back to landscape mode. I'm gonna see how I can. Alright, hold on, be more on. Yeah, it's not too far. Like in the next couple minutes, but I'm trying to see how I get this thing in the landscape mode. We all know that every time Go Teams have we lose. Yeah, yeah, we all know that the Leafs had quote unquote down year last year. Like, yeah, it takes like 15-20 minutes. Be more wrong, like, yeah, like, I've been doing these streams for a while. I'm actually kind of wondering if what my future of doing these streams is going to start to look like down the road, especially now that I haven't been quite as interested in going up to Pine Ridge that much anymore. Now that I'm actually climbing now anyway, at some point, I'm thinking after this summer, I am gonna stop going up there for a time, and for possibly many more years, possibly I'm climbing up the stairs moving on to Pine Ridge. Because at some point, like, I think the obsession has kind of start shifting from like looking an old thing and start looking for a job. Because I no longer really have the need now that I don't have a lot of a crop anymore. Now that my top priorities have really changed, I'm beginning to say that I don't think I'm not interested in going up there anymore. I think like the Leafs finished in a very good spot compared to the last year. Compared to last year, we were overall not that great. But like, I'm starting to think the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be among one of those teams. Yeah. And if this winds up being one of those series where we just can't do anything, yeah, I don't think we heard from people wrong, so I'm going to switch my phone back to here. I don't think I can flip the camera thing, so I think when this thing right here, it was landscape mode. Yeah. You know, I'm starting to wonder how much longer I'm going to be able to keep doing these streams out here. I'm starting to think that starting probably after this year, I think I'm going to be going down in content, slowing down a bit in content to one stream per week. One stream like per week starting December of this year. I'm no longer really am going one stream per day. Like I might be going like one stream like per week. Kind of just recapping every sunset through the week. Because I feel like now that we haven't had that many people in the chat, like I start doing like videos, like short videos, just instead of doing stream. Like I might start doing like weekly videos, kind of like these weekly videos. Toronto overall wasn't that great going into. I mean, a lot of us were saying that going into that season, they were likely going to be similar to last year. But some of the Playhouse were similar last year. They were first in the division overall. By season 10. By season 10. We still managed to pull off a really good season. We still managed to pull off a really good season, I believe. But like, for the Buds, and we were still able to pull off a really good season, but like, just kind of midway through the season, just collapsed. Like, so we really didn't have that much of a good season that year anyway, and that year. So, we'll have to really see how much playoff success we see this year, because how much playoff success we see this year, because if Toronto pulls something off, like, that would be something incredible. Like, I would be watching, like this would be a fun Toronto Maple Leaf team. People actually start to show up, but the problem is people don't show up in like these big moments. Like, we know that everything usually holds in the postseason. It's been issues like this way for years now. Like, we're starting to think that maybe the time, maybe it really is time for maybe make changes. Like, Toronto, in my view, even though the Leafs do have a lot of power and make the playoffs, and you have a lot of things to do it, I think for now on I'm gonna have Mohammed on with me, or maybe for all of my streams, if he's busy or not. Never even if he's busy or not. Like I'm actually considering not doing these streams that much. Start slowing them down. Realistically, I've kind of fallen out of the interest of YouTube. So like, alright, I'm gonna hop on that. Hope everyone has a wonderful day. Alright, bye bye everybody. And there were